Hello, welcome back to Kitchen Court Cases, where we watch court in my kitchen. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day today. It is beautiful outside. The sun is still shining where I am, as you can see. And so we have a wonderful evening ahead of us. I have a few exciting court things to show you, and also I have an idea. But we'll deal with that later. I'm going to start a list of my things I need to pay attention to. I see everybody trickling in. Oh, please let me know what you've had for dinner. And if you didn't like what you had for dinner, that's okay. Just tell me what you wish you had. And I love seeing that. Thank you guys. You are so sweet. Jacqueline's here. Detective Rachel. Daylight, Jonathan, Laura, these hands, Courtney, Jonathan again, Carrie T, Laura in Michigan, Jesse Chioka. Did I say it right last time too? Toby. Um, thank you guys. Jacqueline. Streamlabs. Oh my God, how could I forget you? Chris with the fur. Trish. Monica C. All my people are here. Okay, so you had shrimp cocktail? That is so fancy. I mean, I live on the ocean and still that's fancy for me. You're barely late, Chris. My God. In the grand scheme of kitchen time, you're early. You're in fact early for the show. Um, So, if anybody's new here, welcome. This is Kitchen Court Cases. What you're going to notice in the chat is we do some fun games. We gamble with points that are free. You don't even have to be a member, though I would love for you to subscribe at the very least. Um, Jesse had chicky nuggies. I love chicky nuggies. Um, Jacqueline has not made dinner, but she's going to make liver and onions. I believe Jacqueline says that only to get a rise out of me. I'm just kidding. Nana, when I told Jacqueline last time you said you were eating liver and onions, because I'm pretty positive it was just you that says that you're eating liver and onions. I told Nana and she was like, I like that. I was like, I know, Nana, that's why I'm telling you. Um, Oh, reminder. That's a great reminder, anybody. This is a great med check reminder. This is a time for you to eat if you didn't eat today. This is a time for you to stop, look, listen to what's going on around you and think of what you need to take care of. And then if you can't remember, pop it. If you remember, but you usually forget, pop it in the chat and we'll help you remember throughout the night. We do a med check every so often, a food check. Jody made a HelloFresh meal, super tasty. Trademark HelloFresh, no. Um, I love HelloFresh meals, honestly. I get them quite a bit. Um, Med check, food check. Courtney had pizza and pizza rolls. Sounds so good. Pizza and pizza rolls. So, never a big pizza roll person. First of all, I grew up eating very healthy food, much to my dismay. I was just hated it. So well, potty check too. Um, Besia mintes. Is that how you say it, or is it Beja? I did water the garden, Toby. Thank you so much. And I still have it on here because I'm gonna leave it up there. Um, Hi Evelyn, thanks for coming here. No more gummy worms for Laura. Laura, I only purchase gummy candies when I can take them to a job site because I will polish off an entire bin. I will call it a bin. My mouth will be like raw, like bleeding, like hurt. And even still, every moment as I'm biting the gummy, I'm like, "Oh, this is such a bad idea. You should not eat any more of these. Your body's screaming, don't do this." And as soon as it's finished, I'm like, "Fuck, I want another one of those gummies in my mouth." Anyways, just swore to. I'm just really on it today. Um, Sour Jolly Rancher gummies. If you guys want to send me sour things to try on camera, I will do that, by the way. I love trying crazy stuff. But only for a crowd, not by myself. Isn't that funny? Um, no, and listen, here's the thing. I healthy, there's different levels of healthy, right? And there's different levels of like food, Hyrita. There's different levels of all of that kind of stuff. And as a child with undiagnosed ADHD, therefore uncontrolled ADHD, who as a child you don't have a lot that you control. You really don't. And food is one of those things that you can exercise a tiny bit of control over, but not if you come up against a match. And my mom was a match for me and my food. We would battle over food constantly. And it's not great because unfortunately it didn't set me up for very healthy eating. Um, but I remember sitting at the table for a long time before like she would let me get up because my plate wasn't cleared. And I would often like pray for a phone call to come in during dinner so that I could take my plate and dump it back into the pot while she was on the phone. Um, we also had a table that had like an underhang and another little shelf sort of underneath it. It was decorative. And I would strategically hide food underneath that and then come and collect it later. Um, I would, we didn't have an animal, so I couldn't feed them. Well, this isn't that old school. I'm not that old. I consider myself quite young. Anyways, the whole problem is this. I agree with healthy eating, and it's actually really, really good to eat healthy. However, it is fed is best, in my opinion. And fighting, to me, picking your battles is something as a parent that you really get to learn how to do. But as I've grown older and I have a 14-year-old child, um, the battles are different in a different way because I now have my ADHD under control. So I don't have like anger as a go-to emotion very often anymore, which I used to, and which I did absolutely as a kid. So I used to argue no matter what. But every morning, so this is a thing too. Don't admit your crimes online. But I live in Canada and loonies and toonies change. Like you can pick up a decent amount of change around your house usually back in the day. And so every morning I would walk to school. And on our way to school, and I'm talking about elementary school from like probably the fourth grade, fifth grade, um, I would walk to elementary school with my sister, who I was hating at the time as usual, and would stop in at a convenience store every single morning and buy a Coke, a can of Coke, and a crunchy chocolate bar. And I would eat that. And interestingly enough, caffeine, sugar are very important for people with ADHD, but I was not allowed any of that at home because they thought if you have a hyper kid, don't give them any sort of processed sugar or refined sugar or any sugar. And in fact, what my brain and part of what I needed was sugar. Anyways, so I would drink a Coke and eat a crunchy every day secretly. And then I just kept drinking Coca-Cola. I only recently quit drinking Coke last year. Um, but I would drink easily like 4 or 5 Cokes a day. Easy. It was my natural go-to drink. So Anyways, guys, as we are here now, we're about to start our evening feature presentation, which tonight is oh, right. I'm like, what is it? What did we find for today? Um, oh, last thing I'll say about eating. So, two things I found as I became an adult, I found no pleasure or like enjoyment at all of cooking or preparing meals or any part of that until I started dealing with um, some of the shaming that is what my brain interpreted how my family managed food. And so I was it doesn't matter if it was or it wasn't. How I interpreted it was about food shaming and like really monitoring what people eat and judging that, and it was just difficult. So what I found was a number of YouTube channels like mukbangs. Originally, like years ago, I would just watch mukbangs and sort of like pick away at food and feel a lot better eating with somebody else there that wasn't asking me what I was eating. Like even that to me is triggering. If I'm cooking something and somebody's like, "What are you eating there?" I'm talking about before. Now I have a lot more ability to own my food choices, and just say, yeah, this is what I'm eating. And if I don't like it, that's okay. I can throw it away because I'm an adult. So, hi, Jojo. Thank you for coming if this is your first live. Um, I love Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart. I do need theme song music right now. And it's not about being fat or skinny. Also, that's the thing. Um, a lot of my issue with food was around people expecting you to finish what they give you. And so, especially as a young adult or like a, like in my 20s and then in my 30s when I would go, I mean, the pandemic was the beginning of my 30s, but when I would go to people's houses, I would have to do this sort of pre-warning of like, just so you know, I have a weird thing about food and it has nothing to do with you. And I am not trying to insult you, and there's no way that you can do anything about it, but I'm going to eat very little. And just that's it. And some people just really have a hard time with that, and some people don't. eh, it's funny because I can go to a restaurant just fine and order whatever I want and eat it usually just fine. Nowadays, I'm learning to try new foods. That's part of why I like going on a cruise because you can eat as much as you want from the main dining room, like order off the menu, and nobody gets mad at you if you don't finish your food. So you can try all the appetizers or all the main meals just to see. Because like I didn't eat mushrooms until I was 34, and now I love mushrooms. So that's part of how my kitchen plays in because I'm always in the kitchen anyways. But I'm getting fat, guys. Not fat shaming anybody, but I quit drinking Coke and I expected to lose a nice like 15, 20 pounds and I gained 60. So, yeah, cleaning your plates um is a hard club to be in, and it doesn't breed good communication with your body for food. In fact, and you'll hear me say this, it starts as early as breastfeeding and bottle feeding babies. And as if you ever are bottle feeding a baby, you can do something to help them, which is if they stop eating, don't try and make them eat more. Okay. Children and people need to learn to listen to their body's natural hunger signals. So when a breastfed baby is eating and naturally stops but stays on the breast, they might just stay there or not actually drink any milk for a while, but will naturally regulate that. And you would never cajole a breastfed baby unless you're dealing with like a weight issue, advised by a doctor and a lactation consultant. But for the most part, you would never cajole a breastfed baby to drink more milk. Like it would just never occur to you because you don't know how much they had. You have to assume they've had enough. And that's actually part of the trust of breastfeeding and the relationship that you develop as a breastfeeding mother with a child is that at the beginning, the first time, you don't know how much they got. Do they get enough? Is that enough? I don't know. But you learn. And so when you have a bottle fed baby, oftentimes people want to measure ounces and measure, and I understand why. Because there's an innate want to provide the right nutrition for your baby. That's a deep, deep maternal and paternal instinct. But um, what you'll find and you see sometimes is people propping bottles for babies or like cajoling them into finishing them. And that's really not ideal for later on when they are having to regulate their own food intake in a different way. Kids will not starve themselves. I remember, so last story and then we'll get started. When I've talked about this before. My daughter, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and when she was born, I was just turned 20 years old. And um, she was I was really obviously new to things, but I went to prenatal classes, I had car seats, we had everything going. And my husband and we weren't married at the time, but we were together. And in the hospital, I had a birth plan, I had everything all settled out. And when I was in the hospital, I was not they I was treated differently than I expected to be treated. And I thought it was because of my age. There was some like comments that were made like, "Oh, do you have a car seat for your baby?" Or are you going to be able to afford that? And I was just like, at like a really heightened state, I was like, "I have two cars. They all have car seats in them." Um and so the first day I stayed in the hospital after my daughter was born and I didn't sleep. And they had a very strict rule in the hospital about no co-sleeping in the bed with the baby. Those nurses pay more attention to if you are napping for one minor second holding your baby than anything else. And so by like the second day, it was like 2 days of no sleep, also having given birth and like having all the hormones running through your body. So I was a little insane. And the nurse came in the morning and I was like, "I'm going home today." And she was like, "No, you're not." And I lost my mind. And I started like freaking out. I was like, "I'm leaving here. And if you don't let me leave, I'm going to take my bracelet and I'm going to cut it off and I'm going to do the same with the baby." Because the babies have these like emergency bracelets on them to keep them in the ward or whatever. Anyways, I was like losing it. And my lovely, lovely doctor comes up at this time, happens to be on the ward, and she's like, "What's going on?" And I was like, they said I can't go home and I want to go home and I just think I need to go home and leave. And she was just like, "Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me check into it." And so she goes over, talks to the nurse, comes back over to me. She's like, "You're fine. You can go home today. That's no problem. They must have been confused or whatever." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know about that." But um the reason, and it turns out they were confused. So when I first got there that first night, I had a private room. I live in Canada, remember, this cost me nothing. But the second night, I was in a room that had room for another person. And in the middle of the night, another person was wheeled into the room. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And my husband wasn't there at the time. He was like, I can't remember why he wasn't there. I was upset about that too. But um, it's like 2 in the morning. They wheel this girl in. The curtain is there, but that's nothing. But it's 2 in the morning. So I'm like, "Shut up, don't talk to anybody." And then I hear her weeping, crying. And I'm like, "Are you okay?" And she was like, uh, I can't reach my baby. And I was like, what? Okay, hold on one second. So I like hobble out of bed. I'm barely able to walk, but I can do it. I get out of the bed, go to her bed, and I see the baby's at the foot of the bed. Stupid. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll push the baby over to you. Are you okay? And she goes, no, I'm in a lot of pain. I said, did they give you the ice pack? She goes, yeah, but it really hurts. And I was like, okay, did they give you the Tylenol and stuff? She's like, no, they didn't give me any Tylenol. So I was like, well, I'm going to call the nurse over. So, because even at 20 years old, my instinct was coming through for somebody else, right? And so I noticed this girl's younger than me. So I'm 20, she's maybe 17, 18 years old. And I call the nurse button and she comes over. She's like, can I help you? I'm like, yeah, you can actually. Hi. You need to check her stitches. They're fucked up and you didn't give her any pain medication. You need to deal with that. And she's like, let me see. So she does this absurdly brisk exam on this woman, girl, mother, and goes, yeah, you've torn your stitches. It'll be dealt with in the morning. And I was like, no, 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 it will not. You'll deal with it or get somebody to deal with it now. She was like, excuse me? I don't think this is your business. I said, no, it is my business. There's nobody here with her, and you're going to go find somebody to figure this out. They were in a goddamn hospital. So I just stayed up all night. Like, they did bring somebody in to fix her stitches. And I was talking to her later, and she was like, I had the baby so fast. Like, I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But they were just as mean, if not meaner to her the next day. Like, where's the daddy? Do you know where he is? And I'm like, you women, just break them down, huh? As they're in their hard spot. And anyway, so I was ready to leave the next morning. And then that nurse comes in and tells me, you're not going anywhere. Oh, fudge. Yes, I am, lady. Yes, I am. And then I ended up starting a mommy group to help moms like that. Um, yeah, that was crazy. The best advice I can give you about having a natural birth or not getting medical intervention is stay away from the hospital as long as possible and use a midwife. They're both covered in Canada. Um, I was the daddy. I was. And you could see them look at me and size my inner strength up, basically. And I was like, oh, lady, I don't know if you've had a baby, but I just did. And I don't know what drugs are flowing through your body once you've just had a baby, but they're nuts. Okay. I am hyped right now, and y'all won't let me even sleep. Jesus. Anyways, I did co-sleep with my daughter for 2.5 years and breastfed her for 2.5 years. And she worked out perfectly fine. The danger around co-sleeping with a child is always if you're ever using substances that reduce your ability to stay awake. So alcohol or downers, because those make you unaware in your sleep. But as a 20-year-old young mother that didn't use those types of, like, I don't drink and I didn't use anything like that. It was just a natural sort of thing for us. Oh, I didn't even know that was what I was a knee rack at the time, but that's what it was. Yeah. Afterwards, I became a doula. I became Lamaze certified to teach Lamaze classes. I ran a mommy group with over 500 moms, and I did a weekly spot on our news channel doing parenting expert advice. And it's all about believing, and I do a lot of research as well, but also just talking to lots of people and learning lots of things and being willing to change your point of view if you need to. Um, but also just knowing yourself. Like most people, they just don't say the real thing sometimes. They'll be like, oh, you can't, nobody can co-sleep. It's like, no, if you drink, like if you're not breastfeeding because you were so missing booze that you went back to drinking and you're bottle feeding because of that reason and you drink at night, no, you should not co-sleep. I'll straight up say it. If you're clear, like I swear to God, I used to sleep like this and my daughter was in this part and all was topless. I never had to wake up. She just nursed herself. Nighttime feeds? No, there's not. Well, she did, maybe, but I didn't. Anyways, okay, here we go. This is a TPO about um, a couple that has a kid. Again, folks, if I can urge you to do anything for your child, it is be the bigger person. Be the bigger person. If you have to write a journal of petty shit, if you have to come here and get that off your chest, do that. But don't do it to your kid because your kid will suffer. So, this is in front of Judge Woke, I guess we call her. I don't know. What do we call this lady? Also, I'm going to have to do some live edits for this one because I sort of fucked it up and then fixed it. So, what else do I'll get out of the way? So, just actually to set the stage before we start, the judge is right over here, obviously. Right here is the petitioner, so the person that is asking for the protection order, Miss O'Neill. This gentleman right here, who has put his cereal bowls on his wall, is the man that they're seeking a protection order against. And down here, we have his lawyer, Miss Diamond, who is a hired lawyer. She is somebody that he is paying. And then right over here, we have, I know his name, it's Mr. Branch. Mr. Branch is from DeKalb Pro Bono, and they represent a lot of people that bring TPOs against people as a service to the community through that office. So he is not a paid lawyer by the client. He's paid by the county to help many people do these hearings. But he, the respondent, has hired this lawyer, Miss Diamond. I think it's important to remember that TPOs are always heightened and sort of big emotions. And so um, you can change your mind in this room and change your opinion, and we always do. And sometimes I eat my words because the person who I at first thought was it in the end turns out to be the jerk. But for the most part, we yeah, we just learn as we go. So let's get going. I hope you guys enjoy. Give me 1 second. I think it was on double speed, so I got to half it down. Bears the burden in this case because it is her motion by a preponderance of evidence, and so her attorney. And the volume gets fixed in about 1.2 seconds or like 30 seconds. Mr. Branch will call any witnesses and present any evidence, and then Ms. Diamond will be able to cross-examine any of those witnesses or evidence, and then Ms. Diamond will present any evidence or witnesses if she wishes to, and then based on the arguments of the parties and the evidence that is presented, I will make a determination about whether to extend this order for 12 months. Okay? We will, so people don't speak too much over each other, the non-testifying party will be muted. So and myself likely, except for when I may need to address any objections, just to keep out down any background noise so we can hear each other best on this platform. And as I have
told many parties, I don't know if I told y'all yet today, the attorneys are probably in the same situation. We're working with multiple screens here, taking physical note of pieces of paper as well. So it may not look like I'm looking directly at you the whole time, but I am actively listening and participating. It just is different on this kind of platform. So I'm sure the same is true for the attorneys as well. So at this point, I will take brief one paragraph opening um, from each party, and I'll let Mr. Branch go first because he does, as I say, bear the burden in this case.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. And so to start, I can already tell you that the respondent is going to argue that my client has filed this petition as retaliation for a pending legitimation case that was filed recently here in DeKalb County. However, my client's petition, it speaks for itself. There are at least three dates involving specific incidents of violence that my client will testify to today and will show evidence that supports a finding that a protective order is warranted. So, based on her testimony and the evidence that is submitted, you will find that TPO should be granted for the next 12 months. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Diamond?
Thank you, Your Honor. To give some context to this, Mr. Harvey filed a petition for legitimation in custody on or about March 23rd, 2023. That petition addresses issues of custody, child support, and parenting time. Ms. O'Neill petitioned for a family violence temporary order, protective order on or about April 3rd, 2023, and subsequently the ex parte order was filed on April 7th. There were some service issues in this case. However, opposing counsel and I have agreed or stipulated that service was acknowledged as of the last hearing date, April 27th, when we appeared. Ms. O'Neill clearly filed her petition in retaliation for Mr. Harvey seeking to legitimate his daughter and have custodial rights to her, as Ms. O'Neill filed the petition into the legitimation case as her responsive pleading. Not only does Ms. O'Neill's petition contain false allegations, but it fails to properly plead with specificity in compliance with Georgia Statute 1913-3, as Ms. O'Neill has not alleged any instances or occurrence of violence between Mr. Harvey and the minor child, nor of Mr. Harvey and Ms. O'Neill. In fact, it hasn't pled with specificity any occurrence of violence at the hands of Mr. Harvey. It also fails to meet the legal standard to obtain a TPO under the Family Violence Statute 1913-1, as no felony, battery, assault, stalking, criminal damage to property, unlawful restraint, or criminal trespass has occurred. There's no evidence of the same. Ms. O'Neill's filing of this TPO is for no other reason than to alienate Mr. Harvey from the party's minor child. As to the property that Ms. O'Neill has requested in her pleadings, she's not the owner of any of that property. Based on the four corners of the pleadings and in accordance with Georgia law, we ask that the court deny her petition, particularly and especially with respect to the minor child.
Okay, and as regardless of before we get started, regardless of what.
Yeah, Judge, before we get started, you're right. That's a good point. I guess sometimes because I watch court so much, I forget. Like, to me, it's obvious that a TPO, a temporary protective order, is going to likely involve possibly distressing content. You okay, Lynn? What's going on? We can help you. Let us know in the chat. But basically, any temporary protective order is a situation talking about family violence or the accusation of family violence. So please, if you do find that distressing, and if you find it distressing and you'd rather be here and talk about it, that's totally fine, and we're happy to be here for that. But if you do find it distressing and you don't want to be here, please don't ever feel obligated. You're able to move along and come back for another video. But I forget sometimes to give that warning, because to me, TPO is like, they're all going to be a little bit distressing to some people, depending on your level of, what level you're at for how much court you watch. Basically, that's basically it. We're gonna have to need a court meter of like how addicted you are to how messed up certain cases might make you. I don't know. Okay, let's continue.
I end up ruling today, I will make any under the law unless and until, just make sure everybody hears the same thing, unless and until a final order is granted or any order is granted in the legitimation case, the respondent has no legal rights to that child unless and until something happens in that case. So regardless of what I do today, sir, you just need to make sure you are clear with your attorney on what your rights are at this time, okay?
Sure.
All right. Okay, so Mr. Branch, you may call and swear your first witness.
All right, I'd like to call Miss Haley O'Neill.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, and Miss O'Neill, can you raise your right hand, please? And do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
All right, thank you. You can put your hand down. All right, so Ms. O'Neill, could you tell me what your relationship is with the respondent?
It was a relationship that turned into a co-parent situation.
Okay, and so when did you first meet Mr. Harvey?
In November, December of 2020.
Okay, and did you develop a romantic relationship with Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Okay, and how long did the two of you date?
We dated for approximately, after meeting in December, November, I would say we dated up until probably a year during my pregnancy. Then during the pregnancy, we broke up.
Okay, and when did you get pregnant?
I got pregnant in April of 2021.
Okay, and then you said you broke up a few months later. Is that correct?
Yeah, we broke up during the pregnancy. I would say around 6 months pregnant, so that would be October.
Okay, and even though you broke up, what was your living situation during that time?
It was a shared living situation. It was 3 roommates, me, Pierre, and another roommate, all splitting the rent.
Okay, and at what point did you move out of that shared residence?
So we moved out of that shared residence with that third roommate in October of 2022. And it was just me and Pierre in a shared residence.
Okay, and while you were living with just you and Pierre, what was how did you feel about the environment that you were living in?
Honestly, the environment was similar to being in prison. I wasn't allowed to do anything, contact family, or go anywhere simply to go get groceries. I had no vehicle at the time, so the only vehicle I had was Pierre Harvey's, and he only allowed me to use that car for my daughter's doctor's appointments or anything she needed to do, or a doctor's appointment I had. They did share the same building. It was very controlling. It was like a prison. Like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't speak out, reach out to anyone. We argued and fought mentally. There was one physical incident. And these arguments took place in front of my daughter. And when I would try to walk away with my daughter, he would stop me from leaving. The arguments were in front of her. He wouldn't let me even put her in the room to get her away from the argument.
Okay,
It was
and
very violent.
so let me back you up a little bit. And so, so you were never allowed to use a car. When was the last time you owned a vehicle?
Last time I owned a vehicle would have been I had one in 2020, and the ones that I did have in 2020, I had two at that time. They were sold in the year of 2021, around between May and December of 2021. I can't remember the exact month that both of them were sold. But I didn't have those cars with me at the.
So what happened was then I sort of, when did I mess it up? There's a point. Oh yeah. Okay. I didn't mess it up right away, but I
They were
did
located at
eventually have to speed it up again midway through because whatever, you'll see. Also, um, I'm just trying to think of what to say and how to say it in a good way. If you need help and you need some friends, don't feel scared to tell us where you're at. And people, we can find lots of things that you might not believe. So, as long as are you right now safe, Lynn? That's what we're mainly concerned with. I'm singing this song so that most men tune me out when I do that. I'm just joking. But just make sure you're safe, please, right at the moment. And I know it feels a little helpless, but the reality is this is hive mind in a way. There are 35 people here watching, and one of them might have an interesting resource that you don't know about yet. So let's figure it out.
at my father's house because he wouldn't allow them.
Okay, so for the entire time you were living together with Mr. Harvey, there was only one vehicle that could be used by either of you.
Yes.
Okay. And how were, or what are some other ways that he may or may not have used to control your relationship?
So we had a shared bank account. We had one debit card. All of the money that was coming in was being controlled and being directed by him. He told me where all the money went. At the time, I was working 2 jobs. I never saw my money. My money was going to his investments and paying the bills. Nothing was the only things I could get from my daughter would be like from family helping me. I was able to use some of the money on getting her diapers, but the funding was completely controlled by him. Everything as far as like what we ate, what we did, everything was a controlled environment. I could not do anything or make one decision for myself. Um, as far as like the violence and the slap.
So let me back you up just a little bit. And so you did mention that you were arguing throughout the time you were living together. So tell me about any incidents that did become violent or physical with the respondent.
So the one incident that I did provide photo evidence of was a slap on my left leg, on the upper part. I had ordered takeout that night. It was around 11:59. It was morning, like late night hours, early morning. I had ordered some food. I did not simply want to share, and he got very upset and he slapped me on the leg, and we became an argument, and we kind of just went our separate ways in the house. Because and I was not able to call the police again because I'm scared. I didn't have access to that. I was like, I didn't know what to do. I could not call my father or anything. It wasn't that type of thing where I had access to do that like a normal person.
Okay, and you said you were slapped on your leg. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and did that slap by the respondent leave a mark?
Yes.
And did you take a photograph of that mark?
Yes.
Okay, and Madam Clerk, could you please share Petitioner's Exhibit 1 with the gallery? Okay, and Miss O'Neill, did you take this photograph?
Yes.
And this is a photograph of the mark that was left on your leg in the incident that you just described to the court.
Yes.
Okay, and when did you take this photograph?
November of 2022.
Okay, and have you made any alterations or changes to this photograph?
No.
No, and Your Honor, I would like to tender Petitioner's Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Ms. Diamond, any objection?
Yes, I object on the grounds of authenticity. It's not a self-authenticating document, but that is my objection.
Okay. Well, she says it's a true and accurate picture or depiction of her leg that was taken, and that's what her leg looked like then. And I'm going to overrule that objection, and I will admit it into evidence as Petitioner's Exhibit 1.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, and Madam Clerk, you can remove this from the screen now. Okay, and so, Ms. O'Neill, that incident occurred in November of 2022, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and did you call the police after that incident?
No.
Okay, and what was your reason for not calling the police at that time?
I was scared. I had nobody to like reach out to. If I were to call the police, like I don't even think I would be able to reach a phone to call the police. I was that scared.
Okay, and so when were you able to finally leave the residence that you were sharing with Mr. Harvey?
February 15th of 2023.
Okay, and what led to you making that decision?
We got into the last and final straw, just another big argument. And he was refusing. He picked my daughter up, and he was refusing to give her back to me. And I called 911, and he gave her back to me immediately. He wasn't letting me leave the house. He was like barricading the door so I couldn't get out. And that's when I threatened to call 911. That he eventually gave me my daughter back, and I was able to walk out the door.
Okay, and so you left the home, and then where did you go after that altercation?
Yeah, so I was picked up by someone that I know, and I grabbed a few clothes for the night, stayed over there for the night, and then went the next morning to get the rest of my belongings.
Okay, and were you able to take all of your belongings with you?
Not the night that I left. I was able to come back around 8 a.m. the next morning with a U-Haul and just get the crib and necessities.
And was Mr. Harvey home at the time?
Yes.
Okay. And since leaving on February 15th, have you been contacted by Mr. Harvey at all?
Yes.
Okay, and how has he been contacting you?
Through iMessage and emailing and doing through some limo acts of like on social media through TikToks and Instagram.
Okay, and do you recall when you filed your initial TPO petition?
It was in the end of March. Don't know the exact date, but it was the end of March before April. I believe March 22nd.
Okay, and since filing your petition, has he still reached out to you?
Yes.
And what is the content of those messages or those communications with him?
So there have been a few threats that if I didn't drop the TPO, he would be selling my dog. And there was just like harassing and stalking of me, and him going through my personal belongings and using them against me. Some of the property that I still had at his residence. He has been harassing people in my family and just making just stalking them, seeing what they're doing, following everything that they do.
Okay.
Say that you and Mr. Harvey live together.
Monetary purposes. I'm simply the dog. I picked my daughter up from daycare one day, and they asked me about. They mentioned her father.
Okay, so guys, at this point, I can't show you the screen because of a mistake I made while videoing it, but it is still working, I promise you. So what I've realized is that, did I back it up? When did I do it? Anyways, we're just gonna listen for a minute, and then when I can put it back on the screen, I will. I promise you. Okay, and we're about to get to cross-examination. Okay.
Why do you feel that you need a TPO, or what is your concern if the TPO is dismissed today?
My concern is that I will be found and something will be happened. I'm scared for my daughter that she will go missing, and I feel like he would be the first suspect that I would look to. I'm terrified that if he ever finds out where I am living or where I am located, that something will happen to me or her.
Okay, and do you know if the respondent has ever communicated or contacted your daughter without your knowledge?
Yes.
And what happened on, or when did you find out about those occasions?
I picked my daughter up from daycare one day, and they asked me about. They mentioned her father, and it caught me by shock because we had previously split in the residence, and the daycare told me that he had been going to her daycare and checking her out without my permission, without signing her out. He did not sign her out anytime that he checked her out. He did not ask me. The daycare did not mention that to me or anything, and this happened for about 2 or 3 days before I was aware of it. And I did pull my daughter out and put her in a new daycare since.
Okay. And then you also mentioned that you left your dog at the residence. Is that right?
Yes, because I simply didn't have space in my U-Haul at the time.
Okay. And have you attempted to get the dog back?
Yes, we did in the beginning before TPO was filed to set up a day and time. We did have a time. It was a Monday at a Starbucks, and out of town reasons for the respondent, and nothing just ever seemed to work.
Okay. And do you know what has happened to your dog since leaving the home?
So I'm pretty sure the dog has been sold. He threatened me if I didn't drop the TPO that he would be sold. I know that the residency that I thought where he was living is vacated now. So I'm pretty sure the dog has been sold for monetary purposes. Simply the dog is worth some money, and the respondent needed that.
All right. And thank you, Miss O'Neill. I have no further questions.
All right, Miss Diamond, you may cross.
Thank you. Miss O'Neill, you stated that you all broke up and continued to live together through the pregnancy and up until February 2023. Is it 2023? Is that correct?
No, that's not what I said.
That you did not say that you and Mr. Harvey lived together throughout the pregnancy up until February 2023?
Yeah, but we were not in a relationship.
Sorry, I was confused with my own mouse work there on the screen. I will get out of here. That is an old iMac computer that has been turned into a light and a speaker. I don't, for some reason, have the remote. Anyways, let's continue on. So sorry guys, that was all my fault, but I just didn't have the right video. So part of me thinks I might go back and then redo it, but I can't remember. So let's see.
Relationship. We broke up during the pregnancy. My concern is that I will be found and something will be happened. I'm scared for my daughter that she will go missing, and I feel like me if I didn't drop the TPO that he would be sold. I know that the residency that I thought where he was living is vacated now, so I'm pretty sure that.
Without your knowledge?
Yes.
And what
We've
happened?
heard all that.
Not allowed to go anywhere during the time that you all lived together.
Me if I didn't drop the TPO that he would be sold. I know that the residency that I thought where he was living is vacated now, so I'm pretty sure the dog has been sold for monetary purposes. Simply the dog is worth some money, and the respondent.
So you'll have to see it again until we catch back up live.
Needed that.
All right. And thank you, Miss O'Neill. I have no further questions.
All right.
Okay. You also stated that. All right. Okay. All right. Miss O'Neill, you testified that you, Mr. Harvey, hit your left upper part leg after you ordered some takeout. Is that correct? On or around November 2022, correct? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You stated that you ordered around 11:59 p.m.?
I said between 11 and the early morning hours of the day in November 22.
Okay. Can we look at petitioner's exhibit 1? Is there a time date stamp? I believe there was on the exhibit that I was sent.
Madam Clerk, could you pull up that exhibit?
On page 2.
Okay, what time does that state, Miss O'Neill?
It says November 11, 10:57. In the beginning of my testimony, I said
Miss O'Neill, that wasn't my question. My question was what time? Is it?
10:57.
It says 10:57 p.m.?
Yes.
Your testimony was that you, and I clarified that testimony just a moment ago, your testimony was that you ordered food on or around 11:59 p.m. into the early morning time, correct? On that day. Is that correct?
I said in the late night hours, and then I said 11:59 to the early morning hours. I was saying 11:59 is in the late night hours of that day.
That is when you ordered the food that caused the scuffle, alleged scuffle. Is that correct?
I ordered the food in those hours of that night, and it was delivered around that time.
But the photo was taken 10:57.
That's what I'm saying. I ordered the food that night, and it was ordered, and it got to the residence that night. And then
at 11:59 after
the slap occurred after the food was delivered.
The slap occurred after the food was delivered that you ordered at 11:59 p.m.
I didn't order the food at 11:59.
That was your testimony.
That's not what I said.
Oh, okay. All right. So, you then stated that after you ordered the food, you didn't want to share that with him. Well, let me ask you this. How did you order the food if you had no form of communication to the outside world? You were in prison.
I had DoorDash on my phone.
You had a phone. That was your phone. So you were able to order the food.
Yes.
So you did have a line of communication to the outside world.
Yes.
All right. Okay. And you ordered that food for yourself, not for Mr. Harvey. So obviously he was not governing that correspondence, correct?
Why would I order him food?
Okay. So you said your testimony was that he was upset that you did not share the food that you ordered from your own device, that you had freedom to utilize, apparently. Okay. That he slapped you once, and then you all went your separate ways. Is that correct? Okay, and that happened November of 2022. Okay, and now the only time that has been brought up since November 2022 is in this particular petition that you filed in April of 2023. Is that correct? All right. There's not a police report that you testified. There was no police report. There was no call to the police, correct?
I wasn't able to call the police, ma'am.
But you had a phone that you utilized to take the photograph and that you also utilized to call DoorDash, correct?
I wasn't able to call freely.
But you just testified that you were able to use that form of communication freely. Did you not testify to that?
I'm not able to call a phone like you a regular person can. I wasn't able at that time to just pick up and call whoever I wanted to.
That wasn't your testimony a moment ago, Ms. O'Neill.
That's what I've stated from the beginning, ma'am.
Okay. So you were able to communicate freely with your family in order to get assistance financially and with necessities. You testify that you were able to freely utilize your communication device to order the food and to take a photograph of your alleged injury, although the time date stamp does not add up to what your testimony is that you delivered today. But you did have those devices in order to do those things, but you did not have free communication to call assistance for any abuse that you were allegedly sustaining. Is that correct? Okay. On 2/15, you testified that you wanted to leave the home and that Mr. Harvey would not allow you to leave the home on that date. You also testified that you then called 911 on 2/15.
No, I didn't.
You did not testify that you called 911?
I said I dialed 911 on my phone, but I wasn't even able to press the 911 because the phone was out of my hand.
That was not your testimony,
Yes,
Ms.
it
O'Neill.
was.
Thank you.
It was.
Hold on, you can't cut her off. She gets to explain her answer.
Okay.
Go ahead and
My
explain.
apologies, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. O'Neill, you can explain your answer. It was
So,
talked over. When we're talking over each other, I can't hear what people are saying.
I apologize. Just
So I was able to dial 911 as a threat to him to give me my daughter back and let me out of the home. And that threat simply scared him enough. He gave me my daughter back and let me out the home so I would not call 911.
okay. Okay. You also testified that you were picked up by someone at that point in time on 2/15/2023, correct?
Yes.
So you were able to make contact with someone from the outside world in order to pick you up that day, correct? Okay. You also testified that on 2/16 you came back with a U-Haul to gather your items. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were able to come back with a U-Haul that day, but you were not able to gather all of your belongings into the U-Haul?
No, that's correct. Yes, I wasn't able to.
Okay. But you also testified that Mr. Harvey was there on that date when you returned to gather your items, correct?
Yes.
And there was no altercation at that point,
No.
correct? He did not try to prevent you from leaving in any way, is that correct?
No.
Okay. You also testified that you filed this TPO at the end of March, around March 22nd. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
You have not seen Mr. Harvey outside of these proceedings since February 15th or February 16th. Is that correct?
Yes.
You testified that he did visit your daughter at the daycare, but he did not. You were able to. He did not kidnap your daughter in any of those instances. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. He checked her out of school, and I don't know when he brought her back. She was there back by the time I picked her up, but I don't know where he took her from the time he checked her out and brought her back.
But your daughter was returned to you, correct?
Returned to the daycare. I don't know before 7, before I got there. I don't know at what time.
Okay. And this was close in time after you moved out of the home that you shared together. Is that correct?
This was in the months of February and March.
Okay. And before you moved out, you were in a co-parenting situation with Mr. Harvey, co-parenting your daughter. Is that correct?
Yes.
And prior to your moving out, Mr. Harvey had contact with your daughter every day. Is that correct?
No.
You live together every day?
He's takes out of town trips where I don't know where he's at, and he disappears. So he comes and see his daughter when he wanted to, when he was not out of town.
But you all lived together in the home, correct?
His clothes were there, but he was never there. But
he was never there, but you were living in a prison situation where you were monitored and not able to go anywhere?
Yes, that is, yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Branch, any redirect?
No.
Before you start there, Mr. Branch, I'd like to hear what everybody thought of that. Cross-examination. Was it diamond studded? Also, is he wearing bowls on his ears as well as on the wall? I'm not Rachel, but hopefully somebody is. Okay. Also, reminder, I'm in Canada. So, you guys even have international connections. This does feel like there are many missing details. Here's my question. Would you as a lawyer, since we're not, we can totally just pretend, would you put your client on the stand at this point in this TPO hearing? That's my question. Would you put your lawyer on the stand at this moment for this TPO hearing? Mr. Branch is about to do some redirect here. And I know they're headphones, Beja, but I just, again, also, Jojo, I know she's doing her job, but I think there's a better avenue to take to hammer home here. It doesn't come across well. And we know this judge, though. We know this judge's leanings, I would say, don't you? Anyways, he's a pro bowler. Oh, Brandon. Oh my God. Ah. Oh, I was like, did somebody research him and figure out he's a bowler? That's hilarious. Okay. Yes, I woke you up because I laughed so loud. I'm sorry. Okay, let's get back to it.
Yes, just a few questions. So Miss Ono, you weren't literally in prison, is that right?
Yes. I mean, that's correct. I'm not in prison. I wasn't.
Okay. So you had a phone and you were able to contact people on occasion, is that right?
Yes.
But you felt that it was difficult to contact people because of the respondent, is that right?
Yes.
And why is that?
Simply contacting my family was only for money. If I needed something, if we needed something, especially for Giselle, it was the only time I was able to contact my father. If I wanted, if I needed groceries or something, I wasn't able to just go to the grocery store. I had to order groceries on my phone. I had to order food on my phone. So I did have a phone for those purposes.
Okay. And did the respondent ever check your phone, your messages, anything like that?
Yes. Knew the password, knew the passcode, everything.
Okay. And you said that the physical altercation occurred in November. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And Madam Clerk, could you please show Petitioner's Exhibit 1 again?
Just coming one moment.
No worries. Okay. And Ms. O'Neill, could you describe what we're seeing here in this photograph?
This is a slap from the respondent on my left leg. I'm sitting on a couch. The food is you can't see it, but the food is right next to me to the right. This is a slap from the argument we had about the takeout food.
Okay, and so your feet, your toes would be to the top of the photograph, and your body would be to the bottom. Is that right? That's the position.
Yes.
Okay, and so does the mark resemble any sort of image or figure?
Yes, it is a handprint. It left welts on my leg.
Okay, and so you said it's a handprint. Where are the tops of the fingers in that handprint?
The tops of the fingers will be on the bottom of the picture, and the palm of the hand is close to my knee.
Okay, so you didn't do this to yourself, is that correct?
That is correct.
And what you recall from that incident in November was you received this injury after you ordered your food, is that right?
Yes.
Do you remember the specific time that you ordered that food?
I know it was that night. I hadn't cooked anything and I was hungry, and I don't remember, it was the date. I don't know. It was that night. And the food took about 45 minutes to an hour to get there.
Okay. But it was that evening, and by the time of the photo, do you recall what time the photo was taken?
It said 2:57 p.m.
Okay. And Madam Clerk, could you go down to the second page of that? Okay, and so Miss O'Neill, do you see what time it says that the
Yeah.
photo was taken?
10:57.
Okay, so 10:57 is late in the evening on November 11th. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's what you recall of that incident.
Yes.
Okay. And
Okay, let's just before he finishes, I don't even know what he's doing here. We're gonna analyze this here picture. And the reality about this is Jesse has just said that's a sex slap. It could be maybe this is TMI, I don't know, but yeah, it probably will be. But anyways, the reality is that that could be it. There's white in the handprint. It's a hard hit. It was done with force behind it, not just fingertips. That's how you can tell that. Um, it is done. It looks like left-handed, which is interesting. I'd be interested to know if he's left-handed or right-handed. Um, it looks to be left-handed, and she couldn't have done that. She did not do that herself. That is definitely done by somebody else within an hour of her having that done to her, in my expert opinion. I have expertise on that, and I think that. Yeah, he hit her hard. That if that was on your butt, I'd say the next day you'd be sitting pretty. Um, Now here's the thing, and I want to be like you can see me. I'm very, 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 very pale, and I mark quite easily in some ways. So there's something to be said about the fact that sometimes you can not have to hit somebody very hard to leave a red mark. It's the white mark within the red mark that tells me how hard he hit her. Um, if it was just that she marks easily and he smacked her, it wouldn't have the white in the middle. And that's not her ankle, that's her upper, like mid thigh, like just above the knee. That is definitely a hard slap. It's also in a place that's not like I was gonna say, I've had worse sex slaps in the inner thigh, but again, consenting adults can do whatever they want to each other. And as long as you talk about it first. So there's no kink shaming and there's no blame to adults having consensual fun to do this kind of thing to each other. And it's possible. This is where it becomes a little dangerous because that's why the discussion and consent and like foundation of trust is so important in a relationship. Because let's say one person enjoys that kind of play, and I'm not saying this is play, this is about a different scenario, but the other person isn't as vocal about it to not only say, no, I don't want it, or yes, I do, but like to say, I'm not interested. You have to be also able to say that. Like there's responsibility on both sides. Anyways, why I'm saying that is if you participated in that during fun times with what you believe to be consent, um, that's fine. But I'm just thinking about like what position you have to be in. Like, was she standing and like to hit her, to get her like that the way it is? I almost wonder if he was like kneeling and she's sitting on the bed and like that. Anyways, um, it's just not. I've seen way, way, way more questionable photographs of injuries of people before. That is a distinct slap print that, and I know for a fact the white means it's like the second level of whatever, right before you get broken blood vessels, which would be the third level. And there you would get literally broken blood vessels on the skin, on top of the white, on top of the red. So let's put that on my resume. I can be like a slap expert.
Then the last few questions I want to ask you are about when you left the residence. You mentioned that you could not leave the property. Is that right?
Yes.
And how did the respondent prevent you from leaving the residence?
Blocking the door, just simply telling me I could not leave, like I can't go. I didn't have a vehicle to transport, and if I didn't have funds at the time for Uber or Lyft, I'm just not able to travel. If I needed to call someone to get a ride that I couldn't pay at the time, I wasn't able to call that person to do that. Even when I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go out and do this," it was just an instant like, "No, you can't," and he'll just simply block me from doing anything, any type of activity.
Okay, so I want to focus on February 15th. So he was blocking your way out of the room. Is that right?
Yes, the front door of the apartment.
And so if you tried to walk past him, what would happen?
I was shoved. I was pushed. I was like blocked from leaving the door with my daughter in my hands.
Okay. And you didn't call the police. Is that right?
No, I didn't. I dialed 911 and I showed him that I was dialing.
Okay. And once you made that threat, what happened?
He released. I got everything. He released. He instantly moved because if I called the cops, it would have been a bigger problem. But I knew that if I did that, I could go. And
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right. Any recross, Miss Diamond?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Any other evidence, Mr. Branch?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Any evidence, Miss Diamond?
Your Honor, I would like to use. Well, no, Your Honor. No, I have an opportunity to ask my client about it. No, Your Honor.
Okay. So that's what I'm asking. Do you have any evidence or witnesses you would like to present?
I do. I would like to call my client, Mr. Pierre Harvey, as a witness.
Okay. You may swear him in.
Mr. Harvey, would you unmute yourself, raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the true and accurate testimony to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Mr. Harvey, would you state your full name for the record?
Yes, my name is Pierre Harvey.
Okay, can you tell the court how you know Miss O'Neill?
I know Miss O'Neill because we were in a relationship for approximately about 2 years.
Okay. Do you share children?
Yes, we share one daughter, Giselle.
Okay, how old is Giselle?
She's 1.
All right. And Miss O'Neill testified that you all live together. Can you tell us about the living arrangements throughout the relationship?
Yes, we stayed together for about 2 years. She moved in with me from a very, very hostile environment at home with drug addicts and stuff like that. And so I wanted to help her, and I moved her in with me and my cousin, one of my college roommates, and then me and her moved separately by our own and got our own place. But it was always my residence. All of those places was in my name. The leases was in my name. Even with the roommates, they would pay me to stay there, kind of like Airbnb. So every residence was my residence.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about the nature of your relationship, just overall?
Yeah, the nature of our relationship is throughout the relationship, we actually had a good relationship until the end. We laughed, we joked, we played. Most of the time, it was positive. And towards the end, it was a few things that I did not like that I had to remove myself from the situation. I told her we needed to separate. But throughout the relationship, it was a positive experience.
Right. What were those things that you didn't agree with or had to distance yourself from?
So, like I said, when I met Haley, at the beginning, she was telling me about how she came from an environment with her dad being addicted to meth, and he would do it in front of her, and she would do marijuana and other drugs, and how she physically hit her mother, and her mother told her she couldn't live with her, and her siblings, no communication, and they haven't spoke for the past like years. Still to this day, they haven't spoke. So with all that information, I decided to help her out and move her with me, because she was struggling. She was still on drugs, and when she got with me, we cleaned everything up. We got off cigarettes, we got off marijuana, and we got off the meth. And so with those things, that's how we got into the relationship. And from that position, she was clean for about 2 or 3 months, and then she went right back to the cigarettes and the marijuana, of course. And that was still an issue.
Relevance of this.
Yeah,
this
I can stop. We can stop that testimony, Your Honor. I don't have any problem with moving on.
Yeah, the purpose of this is not to malign.
Absolutely, absolutely. I kind of just wanted to set the tone that they were living together.
Okay, so I'll sustain that objection, and we can move on.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about what happened March 23rd, 2022. Sorry, 2023.
On March 23rd, that was the day I filed my petition and legitimation for my daughter.
Okay. Mr. Harvey, tell me a little bit about the petition. What were you requesting from the court?
I was requesting full custody of Giselle, and that was me. That was it.
Okay. And how did you find out about the TPO that Miss O'Neill filed?
I found out about it as a response to my legitimation and petition. It was filed in the same file as my legitimation case.
Okay. Madam Clerk, I would like to utilize what is marked as Defendant's Exhibit 2.
Okay, so I see you have 1 through 7.
Can you pull up? Is the one labeled Defense Exhibit 2?
It should be labeled Exhibit 2.
Okay. Okay, that's page 5. One moment.
Okay. Mr. Harvey, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is Miss O'Neill's response to my legitimation.
Okay, is it a true and accurate representation of the answer that you received?
I'm sorry, can you reframe the question?
Is this an accurate copy of the answer that you received?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to tender this into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Branch?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, it's admitted without objection and is also likely record of the court as well.
It is. Mr. Harvey, what date was this filed?
This was filed on. I don't see the date. I know it was after my legitimation.
It's a little small. It might be hard. It's hard to see on my screen. It's up at the top.
Okay, it was on the 4th. Well, April the 3rd of 2023. I'm sorry.
Okay, and is this Miss O'Neill's response of pleading to your?
I apologize for having to do this. You guys know, but YouTube Daddy, he is like a stickler for paperwork. Anyways, good night, Jojo. I hope you have a great sleep. Thank you for catching Alive. Everybody, thank you all for being here. We're not stopping. I'm just explaining, taking a breather. This lawyer annoys me. Let's just be real about it. I despise when they put up a document and then start the foundation laying process. That is such a waste of the screen unless it's good juicy reading, which it's not. So, like, all this is rubble for me and YouTube Daddy. And I just don't need that. So, um, let's continue on. You guys are doing so amazing for likes. In fact, what I'm going to do as soon as I can get this thing off the screen and she finishes dealing with this stuff, I'm going to give everybody 50,000 points that's in here right now. So just wait for a moment. And once we get through this part, I will be giving 50,000 points to everybody that's in the room right now because you rock. And Jojo, you can go to bed. I'll make sure you get yours.
Petition for legitimation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. Can we scroll down just so we can see all pages? Just to scroll down of the document. Okay, and Mr. O'Neill, I'm sorry, Mr. Harvey, was Miss O'Neill's TPO a part of this responsive pleading?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Harvey, Miss O'Neill testified about what happened on February 15th. Do you recall what happened on February 15th?
Yes, I do. So on February 15th, I came home from work and Miss O'Neill was smoking cigarettes in the house again.
Okay. We have to just remember something. You know, what date in February is going to have increased domestics? That's got to be the 15th of February, right? Like, did he spend all his money on bowls? And I'm joking about this. I don't, because that's the way I do. But he looks very well put together. Gentlemen, just so you know, and ladies as well, people in general, controlling a person by fear, intimidation, or coercion isn't sexy nor cool, and it makes you a loser. Now, if you find yourself going, oh my God, I'm a loser, that's okay. We ask for help. We can help you. It will be hard, but that is something you can recognize in yourself. This comes from somebody who likes being dominated by people. Do you understand? Domination is different than abuse. The men that I've worked with, the many people within the BDSM community would wipe the floor with somebody who tried to do anything without the right consent and the right foundation laid, basically. So it's a joke for guys or girls who control a relationship and think that they are being dominant or being alpha. It's just the absolute opposite situation. And it's so obvious too. When you control and worry about somebody else's behavior like that, even your spouse, you got a problem. You got to look within really, really carefully because that's a big, big issue. Big issue. For you to be dealing with, not them. You. Domination has absolutely nothing to do with abuse. And abuse has nothing to do with BDSM. BDSM is about trust and consent at its most basic level. It's absolutely mandatory. So if somebody is ever telling you that it's not, or you're not listening to how you're saying, if you say stop, like that's not a real person who's interested in being part of that. The reality of this is when what you realize and why people maybe like me are interested in submission and domination in a way that people can't really understand. Like, oh, well, why would you want to be submissive to somebody? Well, it is a gift from me to that person to be submissive because both him and I or they and I know every single point in time, I hold the key to stop everything without a problem. And so it's always a gift. It's always a decision. And that in itself is what makes it difficult and rewarding to me, is because it's always something that you have to decide and want to do. When you start to hear about, like, and the issue is corn and all of the sort of genres gives people like, oh, I want to try that. It's like, yeah, you do, but then you don't really, or you don't really understand what the work is. The work is, you have to have such a strong relationship foundation before you get to do any of the crazy fun stuff, that it is hard work. But if once you get there, it can be a lot of fun. Yeah, and so bitches against bullshit, that's exactly the same situation with me, and I found one so far. It's hard. I'm scary. That's fine. I get it. Oh, med check, med check, med check. Let's get a med check going. And the other thing is that being submissive in that part of a relationship doesn't mean you don't get to say anything or don't have an opinion at all whatsoever. Again, it's just a choice. For somebody like me, to meter and change my behavior is difficult and challenging and rewarding. So that's part of the fun. But the foundation and work that went into making me able to do that was like a big full-time job for a very lovely man. So, yeah, that's how we do. Anyways, okay, let's continue. What does the lawyer's thing say on the back of her wall? I thought someone said hustle. Anyways, I'll get off the screen and we'll get back to it.
With my daughter in the den, and that started an argument between me and Miss O'Neill, in which I told her, you cannot keep smoking around Giselle. She just had ear surgery 2 days before, and she told me it doesn't matter. I get to do whatever I want to do. And I said, in that case, it would be best for you to call your father and you to get your things and you to leave. And she told me, hey, let's talk about it. And I said, no, I'm tired. And she said, no, I want to stay. And I said, no, ma'am, you have to leave. And she walked out the house and left me and Giselle in the house by ourselves. And she made a call. She was out for about 10 to 15 minutes. And she came back in and she said, okay, we're about to leave.
Okay. Was there a physical altercation that occurred on that date?
No, ma'am. We have never had a physical altercation in our relationship.
Okay. And since that time, when have you seen Miss O'Neill since February 15th of 2023?
The last time I seen her was February 15th. Was the day she moved out.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you do to stop her from leaving on that day?
I actually helped her leave. I made sure when she came back, all her stuff was in the den, and I actually helped her move her things out. It's on the cameras at the apartment. I was actually helping.
Okay. And Miss O'Neill also testified about the altercation that happened on November 11th of 2022. What can you tell me? Can you tell me about your recollection of what happened or around that day?
So around November, just in November in general, it was a good month for us. I mean, me and Giselle went with my family for Thanksgiving, but November 11th, it was a regular day like any other day.
Okay. Do you recall slapping her on that day?
No, ma'am. We have never had physical altercation. Me and Miss O'Neill, I have never physically hit any woman in my life. So, no, ma'am.
Okay. Was the police called on that date?
No, ma'am. They were not.
Have the police ever been called regarding a physical altercation in your relationship?
No, ma'am. The police have never been called.
Okay. What type of household environment did you all live in?
Like I said, most of it was positive. It was just mainly around her habits, and I understood. I think from my perspective, I try to understand what she was going through, which is why we started our relationship from the beginnings because I felt for her and her environment, and so it was just mainly those habits that stimulated from, I guess, from childhood and just growing up of just smoking cigarettes mainly and drugs.
Okay. Was Miss O'Neill free to come and go and move freely as she pleased?
Yes, ma'am. I would even let Miss O'Neill borrow my car for a lot of things. She would go to work. I would let her use my car for work for a lot of times until she wrecked my car. But I let her use my car all the time.
Okay. Was Miss O'Neill free to live life as she wished to?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was Miss O'Neill free to communicate with anyone outside of the home?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When did you monitor Miss O'Neill's phone communications?
I have never had her password to her phone. I've never checked her phone. That's just not true.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Mr. Harvey. What was Miss O'Neill's behavior towards you after you filed the petition for legitimation in custody?
She got very, very offensive. And she was threatening to, if I did not drop the legitimation case, she was going to file the TPO. She was saying that for her to drop the TPO, I would have to drop the legitimation when we come to terms about our daughter Giselle. And I told her I could not do that because I knew we needed the courts involved. So I wanted to do this thing the right way. And then the alienation of my daughter, her not answering my calls so I can FaceTime her. I would ask her how is Giselle? Is she okay? Is she safe? She would just tell me, yeah, we good, or not respond. She just got very, 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 very angry when I filed the legitimation case.
Okay. Madam Clerk, I would like to utilize Defendant's Exhibit 5.
All right, Madam Clerk, if you could pull up Defense Exhibit 5, please. There you go. Thank you.
Can you just
Go through
not?
it to get to 5, okay?
Sure.
So they're all connected. So I'm going to ask that when you show and tender things so I guess we'll just specify the exhibit number on the page you are referring to. Since it looks like they're all kind of there as one attachment. So yes,
well,
okay.
I'm reading this out loud, guys. I think I can show it, but I will be doing a dramatic reading. Please stand by. Let me just sort out whose evidence it is so I know which voice to read in. CRD, you are so sweet. Thank you so much. And Benjamin, to thank you as well for the fun fund. I like that. Thank you so much. Seriously. Let me. Yeah, Courtney, you got to be careful with that. Sometimes if you find the right person, that dies down a little bit and you can settle into some healthy exploration of that and work on the feelings that are behind it too. But anyways, okay, so The problem, this is a email thread, and I'm trying to figure out if Google Threads start from the bottom or start from the top. They're all on the same day. Do you think they start at the bottom? Thank you, these hands. We are all so special, aren't we? Um, I think, yeah, okay. I think it does start at the bottom. So it comes from Pierre, the guy, and he is writing to her, and she writes, or he, sorry, writes, my only option is you admit to lying with the TPO and drop it, or there is no agreement and I push forward and it's the end of conversation. I'll give you 24 hours to be honest with your heart. She responded, and you agree to me as the primary custodial parent? And then quickly again, another email. She responds, you drop everything, the petition for full custody, and we come to an agreement for Giselle about visitation, and I'll drop everything. But I need Zeus first. I think that's the dog.
I sent them separately, so I'm not quite sure what page number Madam Clerk would have.
Okay, it looks
They
like
were
she found
consolidated. Okay, no worries. Okay, Mr. Harvey, do you recognize this document?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
What is it?
This is the conversation through email from Miss O'Neill and myself.
Okay, is this a true and accurate representation of that conversation?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
All right. At this point, I would like to move to tender Defendant's Exhibit 5 into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, it's admitted without objection.
Okay. And Mr. Harvey, tell me a little bit about this conversation.
This is a conversation where Miss O'Neill told me to drop everything, the petition for full custody of Giselle, and we come to agreement, like I stated before, about visitation. And she wanted my dog, and she wanted me to agree to her as the primary custodial parent. And in response, I told her the only option is that she admit that she's lying on the TPO and to drop it, where there's no agreement, and I push forward, and it's the end of the conversation. And I just told her to be honest.
Okay. Mr. Harvey, let's talk about your relationship with your daughter. It was testified that, testimony went forth that you would visit your daughter at the daycare around about the time that they moved out of the home. Why did you visit your daughter at the daycare?
Miss O'Neill blocked me on email and text. I would ask her if Giselle was safe again. She would not respond a lot of times. So when I go to the daycare, I would just check and just make sure that she's okay. And when I'm at the daycare, I won't keep her at the daycare. I will only be inside the building for about 10 to 15 minutes while I'm at work through a lunch break. And the teachers and the daycare providers can attest to that for sure.
Okay. What type of relationship do you have with your daughter?
So me and Giselle, I named her. I gave her a whole name, and me and Giselle have a great relationship to where if anybody gets her while I'm holding her, she starts to cry, whether it's teachers, family, we're extremely close.
Relevance of this line of testimony.
Yeah, Miss Diamond, I mean, currently, no matter how close they were, he has no legal rights at this point.
Understood, Your Honor. I can move forward.
Thank you. I'm going to sustain the objection.
And we can wrap this up, Mr. O'Neill. With respect to the dog, who owns the dog?
I do.
Okay. Who purchased the dog?
I purchased the dog.
Okay. Do you currently have ownership of the dog presently?
No, ma'am. I sold the dog.
Okay. All right. And you and Miss O'Neill were never married, so this would this be a community property?
No, ma'am.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Branch, you may cross-examine.
All right. So, Mr. Harvey, you said that my client began blocking you on social media or on and through messages. Is that right?
No, sir. She blocked me only on email and messages. That was correct.
And when did that happen?
That happened when I started asking her, about Giselle's whereabouts, and when I filed the legitimation.
I don't know what happened there. I
Okay,
apologize.
so where were you on that day?
November the 11th, like I said, it was just a regular month for us, and so I don't recall the specifics, but I'm sure I probably was around, but I do work too as well.
Okay. And you said you had video footage of helping her move out her belongings. Is that right?
The apartment does, and I do have witnesses. I actually was on FaceTime with someone when I was helping her move out. So yes, I do.
And are they here to testify today?
No, sir, they're not.
Do you have the security footage from the apartment today?
No, sir, I do not.
All right. Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect, Ms. Diamond?
Just one question, Your Honor. Mr. Harvey, on November 11th, I just want to make the clarification. On November 11th, 2022, did you hit Miss O'Neill?
No, ma'am. I have never hit any woman in my life. I come from a great family foundation, and that would not be tolerated. And I'm actually a mama's boy, so I would never hit a woman in my life.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harvey.
Yes, ma'am.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, any recross, Mr. Branch?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, any other witnesses, Ms. Diamond, or any other evidence?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, I'll hear brief closing. Mr. Branch, do you want to reserve?
I would,
those?
Your Honor. Yes,
Okay.
I would.
All right, Ms. Diamond, I'll hear from you first.
Sure, Your Honor. Today, I believe what the testimony that has gone forth, the evidence that has gone forth today, I believe what we see here is someone that has made some very serious and detrimental allegations in retaliation out of spite. Ms. O'Neill filed this petition in retaliation to the petition of legitimation filed by Mr. Harvey in an effort to alienate him from his daughter and to thwart his attempts at custody. I think that is evident by her filing her petition as a response of pleading in the legitimation case. But further, the parties no longer live together. They've not had testimony both ways, said that they have not even seen each other since February 16th of 2023. So there's no likelihood of any type of alleged violence reoccurring if there were to have happened at any point in time. There is not a single piece of evidence that has been presented to show any recent or current imminent threats to either Miss O'Neill or the daughter, or any danger of violence. Quite honestly, in this instance, based on testimony that has gone forth, there's no likelihood of any reoccurrence of any violence or any alleged violence. Miss O'Neill has consistently given conflicting testimony today throughout the case and throughout her evidence. Petitioner has failed to meet the legal standard or the burden to obtain a TPO or obtain an extended TPO. The statute says that defines the family violence as the occurrence of any felony or commission of battery, simple battery. I don't think that evidence shows that any of that occurred. The evidence also showed that there is a serious lapse of time between the single occurrence of any alleged abuse or physical contact between the two until now. So there is a serious lapse of time, several months between any allegation of physical harm to Miss O'Neill presently. Again, in keeping with the statute, there is no likelihood of anything happening, as it has not happened in several months. The parties don't have any contact. The parties don't even know where each other live at this point in time. So I do, to that point, there is no reason to extend the TPO for another 12 months. Mr. Harvey has not had any violations of the TPOs thus far, as honestly, we just acknowledged service on 4/27, but there's no evidence or occurrence of him trying to physically contact her or trying to physically be in her space or threatening any physical or imminent harm to Miss O'Neill since this time and during this time. Also, Your Honor, pursuant to 1913-4, we are asking for an award of attorney's fees under that statute, as we find that we feel and we believe evidence has presented that this filing is a frivolous filing in violation of that statute. I also testify that my hourly rate is $325 an hour. We've spent approximately 7 hours in preparation for this hearing, not including today's time. So we would ask for an award of $2,500 in attorney's fees.
All right, Mr. Branch. Thank you, Ms. Diamond.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I want to start by addressing a few of opposing counsel's claims. She mentioned that this case was brought in retaliation for a legitimation claim, but Your Honor, you're aware that even if a TPO was granted today and he had not filed a petition, that would not bar him from moving forward with the legitimation claim in any way. He is still fully within his rights to try and get custody of their minor child. But you heard from my client today that she is taking this action because she does not want to subject her daughter to the violent tendencies that the respondent has exhibited in the past. Opposing counsel also mentioned that the alleged physical violence that occurred back in November of 2022 is not recent enough for you to grant a TPO today, but that is simply not true. There is no recency requirement or a statute of limitations on when these claims need to be made, and any amount of physical violence can be considered when making your decision. Now, moving on to the likelihood of violence occurring in the future, I think it's pretty evident based on the respondent's actions since my client filing her TPO petition. He has gone to the child's daycare and talked to the minor child that he has no legal rights to do, and not informed my client at all. He's continued to reach out to my client even after the petition was filed, and she has had to block him on multiple email accounts and through her phone. And so based on the entirety of the relationship, she has experienced abuse in the form of control, physical harm, threats, and insults that lead her to want a TPO for the next 12 months. And I think it is likely that this type of behavior will continue if the respondent is given the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Even if someone does bring a petition for protection, if their motive is somewhat retaliation, that doesn't make the allegations therein necessarily any less true. So but it may affect the credibility for which they are taken, okay, and the weight given. And I am in a position where, interference with custody, unfortunately, is not technically an act of family violence. That's a misdemeanor unless it's interstate, which would make it a felony. So I'll be honest with y'all, the struggle I have is the timing, the text messages that were presented, and the lack of specificity in the pleading. As the pleading did, we are pleading state, and it does require some specificity as to, it doesn't have to say he committed family violence battery, right? That's not required, certainly. But there does have to be some specific allegations. And as for the March allegations, it essentially says he threatened to have my daughter removed, and threats to the person I'm in a relationship, and not made any efforts to see his daughter or provide necessities. The paragraph 5 of the petition does allege some acts of violence, but does not specify them. It doesn't really get specifics into other things, saying that he still has my dog and other personal items. I have to resolve this the best I can, weighing all of the evidence, and I have to find by preponderance of the evidence. Based on everything, I'm going to tell you one thing as far as the respondent. I want to make sure you're real clear before I say my ruling, and your attorney can help you understand this. One of my concerns I heard through the hearing is you kept saying my residence. If she resides there under Georgia law for any period of significant time, she's a resident. Okay, and I heard my daughter. You have no legal rights to her yet at this point. Okay? And I heard I named her. Those type of comments does give the court concern about the mindset that's going on. And I want to make sure that everyone is very clear on that unless and until you have final order of legitimation, you have no rights to this child, and you could be arrested for interference with custody for any interfering with her legal custody that she has at this point, okay? So you really do need to understand that. I am not going to extend the petition at this time because the timing combined with the text, combined with the lack of specificity in the pleading, gives me pause. But that does not mean, should there be anything in the future, she cannot refile a family violence petition, and she may allege everything with specificity, and if there's any new allegations, you can be sure this hearing may turn out differently. Okay? So at this time, the legitimation case can take its course through the courts, but you know that she does not want any contact. You cannot reach out to her about the daughter or contact the daughter. I mean, you could, but you might get in trouble for it. All right, so talk with your attorney about that. But at this point, I am not going to extend the order. I do appreciate y'all waiting all day and giving me that information. Y'all are excused.
So, what do you think about that? Sorry, the dog was, I had to let her out and I'm back in. What did you think about that? I'm not sure I agreed here. What I think happened, well, let's just say I've seen TPOs put in place for less. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about that. If anybody here has ever feels like they need to talk and for some reason we're not here, or you'd like to talk differently, please keep in mind that the crisis line is available in the United States by texting 741-741, and you can reach a volunteer crisis counselor. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can